Have they finally proved me wrong? No, they haven't. So check this out. We're going to look at this study from NBR, National Bureau of Economic Research. The retirement of a consumption puzzle. The retirement of a consumption puzzle by this guy, Eric Hurst. And Eric Hurst is Bruce Hurst's son. If you know who Bruce Hurst is, put in the show notes because you would be a legend. I'm sure he's not Bruce Hurst's son. Anyway, this is from 2008. Now, I was reading this article from, I can't remember, I was reading from the consumption puzzle. The consumption puzzle is why the retiree spending goes down. All right. And they cited this Eric Hurst study from 2008 where he's actually looking at UPC codes of retiree spending. And it's very interesting because UPC codes is like, oh, that's pretty cool. I hadn't heard anyone doing that before, so that's pretty cool. Now, this goes back to 2008, and Eric Hurst is from a professor over at University of Chicago, right? Where is he? Right there. Graduate School of Business, and you can see his thing right there. There he is. And he's a Becker-Friedman Institute, director of the Becker-Friedman Institute. I imagine that's Gary Becker and Milton Friedman. So, pretty cool. I don't know anything about Eric. I've never heard of this guy until I came across this article that I was reading, because I do look at the footnotes, believe it or not. Anyway, so his premise, check this out. He's saying right here that we're going to graduate retirement of the consumption puzzle. So let's read what he says. His abstract summarizes 5 facts that have emerged from the recent literature on consumption behavior during retirement. Collectively, the recent literature has shown that there is no puzzle with respect to the spending patterns of most households as they transition to retirement. That's a key thing, transition to retirement. Just talk about going from pre-retirement to post-retirement. But we're not talking deep into retirement. I just want to point that out. In particular, the research has shown that there is substantial heterogeneity, diverse. Homogeneity is similar. Heterogeneity is diverse, if that makes sense. And spending changes at retirement across consumption categories. The declines in spending during retirement for the average household are limited, according to Eric, to food and work-related expenses. Spending in nearly all other categories of non-durable retirement, actual food intake remains, spending in nearly all other categories remains constant or increases. Now, he's just using, basically, but the pre-retirement to the base of the first 5 years. Very interesting, very interesting. But even here, and we have other papers that disagree with this. And if you actually look into the history of actually not just the first 5 years of retirement, but going from 70 to 80 to 80 to 85, this doesn't diminish the argument about people spending less retirement. But what's interesting, right here, the declines in spending during retirement for the average household are limited to the categories of food and work-related expenses. Moreover, even though food spending declines during retirement, actual food intake remains constant. Interesting. The literature also shows there's substantial diversity, why not just say diversity, across households in the change in expenditure associated with retirement. Much of this diversity can be explained by households involuntarily retiring due to deteriorating health. Again, when people, a lot of people say, retirement early means you're going to die early. Well, they do that because they have a health shock where they have to retire, and 5 years later they're dead. I mean, so it's just, it's not cherry picking data. What's the other? It says you got to dive deeper, man. You got to dive deeper. You say, oh my goodness, if you retire, you're going to die. It's kind of like if I say if you eat carrots, you're going to die. Yeah, you're going to die. Is the carrots cause of the eating of your death? No. It's like you retire early, you're going to die. Yeah, people retire early to die. Why? Because a lot of them are healthy. They retired before they actually wanted to, or they retired young. Stupid. Anyway, let's keep going here. I thought it was very interesting. That guy, in his chapter on consumption, the Handbook of Macroeconomics in 1999 concludes, the lifestyle model has been fitted with success only to households in the middle of their life cycle. Additional work is needed to understand the behavior of young and elderly households. The consumption behavior of retirees in particular can be quite difficult to model. Why? Because we did not go the spending, adjusting each and every year with inflation. It's a life cycle model, essentially. That's what we expect. We say, hey, as you get older, you're going to spend less money because you age out of doing things. Now, people don't argue that. They haven't made that argument. I make that argument. I think most researchers now do as well. But that would be hard to model. Say, why isn't the spending going what we had predicted? Well, because, again, people have utility. My son just went to freaking Six Flags the other day. All right. What's the utility for him going to Six Flags? The actual enjoyment. He loved it. He loved going on the roller coaster, Goliath, and all that. I don't love it anymore. I did. So my utility going to Six Flags is lessened significantly. His utility going to Six Flags is greater. As I get older, my utility of going to the Tennessee Titans game. I saw the Pats play the Titans last night. Took my son up there to see him. It was freaking awesome. Pats crushed. The new GOAT of all Patriots quarterbacks is now Drake May. I don't think the Patriots ever had a better quarterback than Drake May. Did the Patriots ever have any good quarterbacks? Steve Grogan, Tony Eason? I guess that's it. Basically, Steve Grogan, Tony Eason. They didn't have a better quarterback. So Drake May comes along. Now, will I want to drive in 20 years? Will I want to drive to Nashville 4 hours each way to go see the Tennessee Titans? Of course not. You see what I'm saying? So that's my utility. Now, let's keep going. Then we got right here. The fact that certain types of expenditures fall sharply as households enter retirement is rather robust across data sets within the United States, across data sets from different countries, and across differences in methodological approach. The declines in expenditures are mostly limited, though, so he's agreeing with that, to two types of consumption categories. Work-related items, such as clothing, transportation costs, and food. Food, because everyone says you spend more on food, guaranteed. When broader measures of consumption are analyzed, or when expenditure categories that exclude food and work-related expenses are analyzed, the measured declines in spending upon retirement are either close to zero or are increasing. So his argument is, as we go from transition from pre-retirement to post-retirement, if we take away food consumption and work-related expenses, your expenses stay flat or they even increase a little bit. I don't disagree with that at all, but check this out. Why? And this is what's interesting. Actual food intake, though, remains constant through retirement, despite the fact that food expenditures fall sharply. There is ample evidence within the literature documenting that retirees spend much more time on food production, preparing meals and shopping for groceries than their non-retired counterparts. So why does your food consumption go down? Because you're spending more at home. You're chopping up the stuff instead of just going out to the store and eating out. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Households that experience real consumption declines upon retirement often had experienced involuntary retirement because they got sick, essentially. Moreover, these involuntary retirements are often due to health shock. So his argument is that when retirees spend less initially right out the gate from pre-retirement to post-retirement, the reason they're doing that is because they got sick. They got sick. Well, that completely makes sense to me. All right, check this out. Let's see. Overall, the aggregation of the evidence from the existing literature suggests that the claims of that guy and Bernheim, recounted above, may have been premature. The declines in expenditures, aside from work-related expenses, primarily occur in food, and the declines are the largest for those who involuntarily retire. So basically saying Antanasio, I'm not a Italian, so I can't speak that language, and Bernheim, I am German, so I can speak that. We're basically saying we do show evidence that retirees spend less as they age. And my man here, what's the guy's name, Eric Hurst, he says the reason for that is because food and work-related expenses are the reason, especially if you exclude people involuntarily retired. And again, he's just looking at a short sample of this in terms of pre-retirement, post-retirement. He's not looking at the entirety of retirement. He's just not. And that's, you can look at a consumer expenditure survey, health retirement study, all that stuff to validate what I've been saying for years. But anyway, the fact that households smooth their consumption into retirement does not imply they have saved adequately for retirement. It is possible that households who plan insufficiently would not learn about their savings shortfall until well after they've retired, possibly when they have a huge future health shock. Maybe. I mean, it's always possible. We can always say possibility. So he was saying, is right here. The fact that households smooth their consumption as they transition retirement does not mean they saved adequately. Okay, maybe not. That seems a little bit silly to me, but okay, we'll go with it. Again, what he's saying is people could be responding to retirement in terms of why they spend differently than pre-retirement, not because they have enough money to do that, but it could be because they're running out of money. Well, that might be true, except for the fact, what are the people actually spending their money on? And right here is when the rubber hits the road. The main finding of Aguiar and Hurst is to show that between early 60s and late 60s, total non-durable spending plus housing services falls by 5%. There is substantial variation across the categories of consumption. In particular, spending on total food, clothing, and non-durable transportation falls by 7, 18, and 15% respectively. The reason I want to highlight transportation is the third largest portion of CPI, Consumer Price Index. And again, as I said in my book, Relax and Retire, what are you buying? Are you buying a rent? Are you leasing or buying a new or used vehicle every year? No. But that's what transportation consists of. The cost of transportation in your inflation numbers consists of that you're going to be buying or leasing a newer used vehicle every year. Stupid. All right, let's keep going. Conversely, spending on housing services, utilities, charitable giving, net gambling, entertainment remain constant or rise during the retirement years. For example, between the early 60s and late 60s, entertainment spending increases by 5% and charitable giving increases by 4%. Value weighted, the categories that decline at retirement and the categories that do not decline at retirement both represent 50% of household total non-durable expenditures. So again, if people are running out of money, would entertainment be going up by 5% and charitable giving by 4%? No. So there's your answer right there. And one guy he's looking at says, a key fact that emerges from a study is that food expenditures at retirement decline much more sharply than does the expenditures on other non-food, non-work-related categories. Right here. Right here. Whereas the anticipated fall in consumption growth is around 2%, actual consumption growth at retirement falls by as much as 3%. In other words, they find evidence of retirement consumption's puzzle in that expenditures are declining more at retirement than would be predicted by the standard lifestyle model. And again, what Eric would attribute to is basically only food and work-related expenditures and health shocks, that people are spending less because they got sick. Okay, but we have, look, the evidence is not across the board. The evidence is pretty dramatic here, again, of retirement consumption falling. This guy is saying it's falling because these reasons, but not saying it's not falling. Anyways, I just find this interesting. So that's all I want to share with you here. I thought it was pretty interesting. There's lots of stuff in here. Again, the results show that the extent of non-durable consumption falls in retirement. It is mostly driven by work-related expenditures and food expenditures. So no one talks about the spending on food going down so much. Eric did, and he looked at UPC stuff, which is pretty interesting to me. The code, you know what I'm saying? And I thought that's pretty interesting. So, leave that with you. Now you look here, following a given household through retirement, food spending declines by 12% at the median. Again, just to belabor this and beat this dead horse, there's evidence from microdata across many countries showing that household expenditures drop precipitously at the incidence of retirement. However, collectively, analyzing studies show that most of the declines are due to work-related expenditures and in food expenditures. So all those say, our food expenditures going up. They're just not. They're not, according to Eric Hurst, Bruce Hurst's son. I just thought I'd share that with you. I was like, all right, sweet. Maybe this is going to be the piece of resistance that says, Josh, you're wrong. Retirement expenses are going up with inflation each and every year, and I've yet to find it. Send me the link on any article you can find that says I'm wrong. I'd love to see it. It's just, there was one, I can't find it. I wish I could have. I found one that was somewhat anti what I say, and I forgot where I found that from. It was like 3 years ago. I said, man, I couldn't find it, dude. I thought I downloaded it. I went back. I couldn't find it. It just freaking ticked me off. Because I'm not afraid to see the alternative viewpoints. I'm not. I just like the alternative viewpoints. If you got one and I got 10, at some point you got to say, that guy's looking at things incorrectly. Your old buddy Josh is, once again, gets the 2 thumbs up. God bless. We'll see you guys.